originally this video was going to be a review of all of Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 2022, so campaign, multiplayer, spec ops, a lot. But once I started writing it, I realized I had very different things to say about each part of this game. So this video is just going to be about the campaign. This is my review of the campaign. I saw lots of sort of backlash against IGN when they gave it 6 out of 10. If you're part of that backlash, you might not want to watch the rest of this video because, spoilers, I don't think it's very good. Now don't get me wrong, I did have fun with the campaign. When I first played it, I was like, oh, that was pretty good for a Call of Duty campaign. You know, they're never that great. But then the more I've thought about it, the more I've realised the story and characters are terrible. And there are some hints that at some point a writer was trying to do something deeper with this, but for whatever reason they were completely shut down.
Medieval English. Because you're all uneducated street dogs.
So let's start off with a quick run through of the characters. You have Price, he's good at killing and he has funny facial hair, I guess. There's Soap, he's good at killing and he's got a mohawk. There's Gaz, he's good at killing and apparently has absolutely no other character to him. He was a Met police officer who witnessed the most horrific terror attack on English soil in history, but that never comes up. Then there's Ghost, that's everybody's favourite, and he's good at killing and he always wears a mask, except for when he doesn't. He takes it off in front of everyone to put on another mask that is basically the same mask, it's still got a skull on it, and basically none of the other characters react at all to it. They just sort of look at him and go, oh, okay. So it's clearly not a big deal. I really don't understand the love for this character. I'm guessing it's kind of like how people loved Boba Fett despite him not doing anything in the original Star Wars trilogy. Maybe teenage boys just love killers without faces, but there's no depth to any of this part of Task Force 141. Then you have Alex, who isn't in this game, even though they established he's a key part of Task Force 141 and he survived Modern Warfare 2019. Maybe he was busy or on holiday or something. And you have Mara, who turns up to help, sacrificing a huge number of her own soldiers in absolutely crazy suicidal tactics like riding motorbikes up to heavily armoured vehicles and trying to throw Molotovs at them and then just exploding constantly. And Mara never seems to really ask why. She just respects Price that much because, I guess, because he's so good at killing people. I mean, her bond in the last game was really with Alex, but he's on vacation, so I guess Price will do. Then you have the new members. You have Alejandro, who is Mexican Special Forces, and he's trying to deal with the cartel despite widespread corruption in his own government and armed forces, to the point where he has to keep details of his own family secret just to keep them safe, knowing that his crusade against the cartels puts them at risk. But this is mentioned once, just before he gets into an open battle with the Mexican army, and there's absolutely no repercussions whatsoever for him. More on that later. And then there's Rodolfo as well, who for some reason is never mentioned in any of the marketing material or anything like that. But he's Alejandro's partner, who's clearly seen enough other Call of Duty campaigns to know that a sacrifice will need to be made. So as soon as he finds himself injured in a small house with a fire just starting, he immediately decides that this is his time to die, and he actually tells Alejandro not to come rescue him or anything like that, and then Alejandro easily comes in and rescues him because he wasn't in that much danger. Then we get into the supporting cast, and just warning in case it wasn't obvious from the beginning, there's going to be big spoilers throughout the rest of this video, so if you haven't played the campaign through, you should probably play it before watching this, unless you just don't care about spoilers, but you've been warned. So we have Shepard. He's a US general who has one purpose in the narrative, and that's to betray everyone, and we knew it was coming because it was something that happened in Modern Warfare 2, but instead of having like a Bond villain-esque over-the-top reason like the previous series, now it's because he's embarrassed that a secretive arms sale he did went badly, and he takes it out on the one group who seem likely to be able to deal with it, and then just completely disappears. It seems really odd. I'm guessing we'll see more of him, maybe in like future seasons with the Spec Ops stuff and raids and something like that, or maybe in Modern Warfare 3. Then we have Laswell, the super smart controller who decides to get back into the field by putting herself in danger repeatedly for absolutely no good reason. She's a master of intelligence, except for when she needs to get kidnapped, so decides to take a boat out into the open by herself off the coast of an area that they've established is used by the cartel for smuggling, and then shock horror, some people there come and kidnap her. And of course there's Nikolai. He knows how to fly and source helicopters. He, as far as I can tell, seems to be there just for the fun of it. Then we have the villains of the game, and this is where it should get really interesting, and it kind of does, but for the wrong reasons. So first of all, we have General Yusuf Ghobrani. This is basically a real person. Qasem Soleimani, sorry if I'm pronouncing any of this wrong, was an Iranian general who was assassinated by the US in Iraq in real life not that long ago with a strike from a drone. In the game, your illegal assassination of him radicalizes the main villain of the game and hints that maybe this will be the interesting theme of the game, that the consequences of crossing ethical and legal lines, no matter how good your intentions were, will come back to bite you. No, I'm just kidding. They invade Mexico later and nothing happens. Then we have Hassan Ziani. This is Ghobrani's second in command, so someone high up in the Iranian army. Apparently the murder of his superior leads him to start funding terrorist organizations rather than just, exposing the US for launching missile attacks and trying to sell ballistic missiles. He gets involved in the cartel because it means, I guess, the story can go to Mexico, and he decides he should personally launch ballistic missiles at Washington, D.C. I'm not really sure why he does this other than he really doesn't like America. Then we have Valeria, who's a cartel mastermind who disguises her true identity, possibly to ensure her safety, although wouldn't the other cartels think less of killing an assistant rather than killing the head honcho to send a message? So she's possibly putting herself in more danger by pretending to be an assistant, and possibly just because there's sexism within the crime world. Maybe, she thinks a woman wouldn't be respected at the head of a cartel. Who knows? She proudly declares that she kneels for nobody, while actually starting the kneeling animation in the game, which slightly undermines her and makes her a little bit less cool than she could have been. And we have Diego, who's her assistant, and he's got a fancy shirt, and he encourages an overworked and exhausted cartel guard to concentrate by repeatedly hitting him and possibly giving him a concussion. He's an idiot and he dies super quickly. And we have Graves. He runs a private military company that is shockingly happy to attack the Mexican army, again with no repercussions as far as I can tell, and then occupies a Mexican special forces base of operations because, and this is in his own words, he likes it. That's it. That's his reasoning. Despite having access to seemingly the entire arsenal of the USA, he decides to fight two people who are on foot by getting in a tank in an area filled with high explosives and lots of cover. The guy is a complete idiot. So let's talk about the actual plot. I genuinely thought the story was going somewhere interesting at the start. When I played the campaign, I didn't know that first mission was based on a real event, but showing Ghost as being the one to assassinate Soleimani seems like a weird choice. In real life, this was generally agreed by everyone as an illegal murder by the US. I know the US government tried to explain it away, saying that we came up with some laws saying that we can do what we want in Iraq, and then everyone said, yeah, but you did that to try and deal with Saddam Hussein. This has nothing to do with it. So there's one sort of connection to one of the major themes of the game, that sometimes countries break the law, but then they have to deal with the consequences. The consequences in this case are focused around the radicalization of Hassan, rather than worrying too much about why the US launched a missile strike like this in another country. This kind of ends up being a pattern. The second mission keeps going down this rabbit hole of consequences. A mission to capture Hassan is derailed when a helicopter is shot down and 141 decide to go rescue the crew. This gives Hassan a time to get away. Ghost at the end of the mission hints that maybe they should have left the crew to die, saying choices have consequences.
Choices have consequences.
That's basically the end of the most interesting part of the campaign. It feels like that was part of an original draft of the story, those first two missions, and then they decided to scrap everything interesting after that and just throw in a load of action sequences instead. From the second mission onwards, you have unprovoked drugging and then outright murder on the streets of Amsterdam by US forces, Mexican special forces entering the US and then de-escalating situations by shoving guns in civilians' faces. You have US and Mexican special forces and an American PMC in an open battle against the Mexican army involving an AC-130, the US PMC doing deals with a Mexican cartel, then overtaking a facility owned by the Mexican Special Forces, and a ballistic missile sold by the US to forces in the Middle East that was actually stolen by Russians and then given to an Iranian general, being launched from Chicago towards Washington DC, presumably exploding somewhere over Ohio. But none of this is apparently a big deal and none of this has any consequences. consequences. For a game that readily grounds itself in real-world politics with the assassination that starts the game, it jumps off the deep end incredibly quickly and abandons the idea of consequences mattering at all. Instead, we're given a meandering story of a group of paper-thin super soldier characters as they wreak havoc in unlikely locations. The tagline for the game was something like, "The ultimate weapon is team," or something like that. And it's like, so the point of this game is that they can achieve anything as long as they work together? That seems like a strange message in a game that features lots and lots of war crimes. Like, that seems like something we probably shouldn't be applauding, maybe. None of the characters are developed in any way at all. The villains all just either die or disappear, and Alejandro's seemingly complex life, you know, the whole thing of trying to balance fighting against the cartel while dealing with the Mexican army itself and trying to keep his family safe, that all turns out to be super simple. Apparently he can just do whatever he wants and it doesn't matter, including starting battles with the Mexican army, including going into the US and getting involved in the death of a lot of police officers. You'd think he'd want to at least be investigated about that. None of that matters at all. If all of this was just like super ludicrous to serve exciting gameplay situations, it would kind of be forgivable. You know how like you don't pay too much attention to what James Bond is doing in the James Bond films, because you know inherently they're very, very silly and are just a way to get to the next action sequence. But in this, it doesn't really help to serve the gameplay at all. In terms of gameplay, we have some retreads of old missions that just kind of remind you how good the old missions were, and then we have an attempt at a survival game that falls apart if you try to replay it and start seeing through the cracks and seeing how linear it is and how easily the systems introduced can break. The all gillied up and AC-130 missions I genuinely believe are better than the originals that inspired them, but only just, and they also both completely lack atmosphere because there's not really anything at stake and there's no reason for you to be there. Like in the all gillied up mission, you're in a cartel smuggling depot in Spain, and that seems to come completely out of nowhere. Or in the AC-131, you're part of a US private military company bombing the hell out of Mexican villages. It just doesn't really make a lot of sense why you're doing the things you're doing, and so it's all just about the gameplay. And like I said, the gameplay is better than it was in those original missions. You know, the all gillied up mission is much less linear, but without the atmosphere, without the context, I think it's a little bit less interesting. The many times the game tries to evoke Clean House from Modern Warfare 2019, it always falls a bit flat because it doesn't have anything new to do with the formula. You move around buildings in the darkness and you kill enemies while the AI around you does the same thing, and they hang around in choke points waiting for you to just trigger the next animation. And because you've seen it before, you kind of know how that works, you know what's going to happen, so it's not surprising or cool. On a side note, for all of the talk of new artificial intelligence in Modern Warfare 2, it really doesn't feel like it was ever used or that there's been any upgrades. The enemy just seems to kind of hide behind one piece of cover and then pop out and take shots, or walk through doorways over the corpses of 4 other enemies you killed there. There are 3 big standout missions that I think feel like something new in the campaign, and I'm glad they did try something new. First of all, you've got Wet Work, in that you approach a marina in Amsterdam and take out the guards to search a boat for clues. Let's, for a second, ignore the fact that you're murdering absolutely everyone in a public dock in a European city without asking questions, but ignoring that, the mission's actually pretty fun. You have all of the water as kind of your territory and you can move around in there freely, but then when you pop out into the enemy territory, so climb up onto the docks, you have to take them out super secretly, super quietly, thinking about sightlines and stuff like that before slipping back under the waves. It feels very cool, and while it is insanely short, it's a very, very small mission, it does force you to consider the best way to approach it, and I like that. Violence and timing is the big vehicle mission. Whilst I've seen people complaining about it, I had a good time with it. It does a decent job of showing the new vehicle interactions, like climbing out and hopping onto other vehicles, and it's much more engaging than the usual like turret sections that we get. That being said, it is incredibly repetitive. There's multiple vehicles that have the exact same setup of enemies on board, all fighting you in the exact same way. The terrain never gets interesting. You don't have anything where like, oh, now you're going on a bridge where it's super narrow or anything like that. And when the mines start coming, that should be this like harrowing moment as you watch civilians being taken out, but somehow the atmosphere just isn't there, and it becomes like just super video gamey, where you're trying to plot a route between flashing red lights. Like, you don't really appreciate the drama of what's going on while you're having to concentrate on that. Finally, there's Alone. This is the big survival level and the one I've heard the most praise for. On your first playthrough, it does a pretty good job. You can scavenge for supplies, craft tools, try to slip by or take on enemies while you're constantly on the verge of death. Unfortunately, if you return to the mission, like for realism or something like that, you realise just how linear and small this mission is. In each area, there's a handful of buildings and enemies, and once you know where to go, you only need the absolute bare minimum of supplies to open doors. The AI is spectacularly stupid in this mission, and will gladly walk over to a pile of bodies to see what's going on. And if you alert one enemy, every other enemy knows exactly where you are, presumably through telepathy. It's just kind of, they've tried to do this very systems heavy level within the game, but all of the systems are absolutely paper thin. They're really, really shallow. And that means that while you're sort of wrapped up in it, while you're immersed in it, it works fairly well. But as soon as you start thinking too much about what you're doing or how to solve it, then it suddenly becomes unbelievably easy. Overall, despite all of this, I did enjoy my time with the campaign. I had a good time playing through it, and some of the combat encounters were a lot of fun. I really enjoyed the prison level, that was pretty good. But where Vanguard had a stunning soundtrack, engaging characters, and a huge variety of locations, Black Ops Cold War had attempts at changing up the structure and some real creativity in mission design, and Modern Warfare 2019 had a massive tonal shift away from the previous games to something much grittier. Modern Warfare 2022 just feels like it doesn't really have anything going for it, and that's a real shame. So I end up kind of agreeing with IGN's review of the campaign, where they gave it 6 out of 10. I genuinely don't think it's as good as Vanguard's campaign. While Vanguard's campaign had some very, very samey mission structures and combat encounters, I think the story, the narrative, the characters, and the music really kind of elevated it beyond just another Call of Duty campaign. Whereas Modern Warfare 2022 just feels unbelievably generic, which is a shame. So let me know in the comments what you thought of the campaign. Did you like it? Do you think there's something about the campaign, or especially the story, that's really good that I missed out on? I'd be really interested to hear other people's perspectives on this. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you for the next one. Goodbye.